Okay, here we're going to start getting into forms of linear equations, and in order to do that we have to start at the basics, which is your slope. The slope is a rate of change. It's the slant of your line. It's what makes your rise over run. Okay? We have a very important formula for that, and that's right here. We designate slope with the letter M. And we find it by finding the change in our y values over the change in our x values. So that's where rise over run comes from. Your y values signify the vertical progression on your graph, and the x values are your horizontal. So we're looking at how are we actually moving from one point to another. Now we do have a couple special cases that we need to keep in mind. First is your horizontal case. Horizontal cases are given by the lines y equals b, where b stands for the constant. Okay, so this is y equals a number. We can also look at it in terms of f of x, meaning a function equals a number. But essentially, we are getting at that your vertical axis is what's being crossed. Okay. Now, when we're talking about slope, we are talking about the slope of your line. And in this case, because it is horizontal, your slope would be 0. Okay, so a horizontal line, your slope is 0. It is not changing up and down in any way. Vertical lines are different. They are not functions. They are x equations. What this means is that you are going to cross the x-axis only. That same idea is for your horizontal lines. Your horizontal lines are going to cross your y-axis only, meaning they're not going to cross the other axis. Now the other thing to keep in mind is that a vertical line is not a function. What that means is that its slope is called undefined. And the reason for that is because look at the slope formula. Your change in x is in your denominator. And the biggest rule about fractions that you still have to hold true is that your denominator, i.e. the bottom, cannot be 0. Okay, that is the biggest definition that is always going to carry through no matter what math you're in. So here, in order to make your denominator here 0, means you have to have no change occurring in your x-axis. There's no diagonal there. Well, that's what we get when we have vertical lines. There's no diagonal there. Okay? So you need to remember these two special cases whenever you are solving or graphing and looking for your slope. So the first thing we're going to look at is just simply how do you find the slope between 2 points. So we have the points -9, 8, and 7, -6. So the first thing that you have to do is you need to identify which point is x1, y1, and x2, y2. After you identify that, then the second thing that you need to do is you need to plug into the formula. Now, it actually does not matter. So, what do I mean by that? Well, first, let's go ahead. So, way number A. Let's make x1, y1 equal to the coordinate -9, 8. This would then mean that x2, y2 is equal to 7, -6. So I have to plug into my formula. So this states that we're going to do y2 minus y1, and we're going to divide that by x2 minus x1. So here, my y2 is negative 6. So I'm going to have negative 6 minus my y1, which is 8. Now I'm going to divide that by my x2, so 7 minus my x1, and negative 9. So whenever I'm setting up slope, I always like to use this little trick. And the trick says your vertical numbers right here should line up as the coordinate point they came from. So here, if you notice, I have y2, x2 are sitting on top of each other. So we should have the same thing over here. y2, x2 should be sitting on top of each other. As long as you have that, then chances are you have mashed things up correctly. Now the only thing that you have to do here is you just simply have to simplify. So I have negative 6 minus 8 is going to give me a negative 14. And I have 7 minus a negative 9, so that's the same as 7 plus 9, which is 16. And now you need to reduce. I can take a 2 out of the top and bottom, so I end up here with my slope being a negative 7 over 8. Now, if you remember, I said that it didn't matter if you went forwards or backwards. So, just for grins, let's look at way number B. And let's say that we made x1, y1 equal to the other point. So 7, negative 6, which meant x2, y2 was equal to negative 9, 8. So let's test my theory that it does not matter how you plug it in. So again, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In this case, x2, y2, so here we're going to have negative 9 minus, y2, so this is going to be 8 minus y1, negative 6, over, and then x2. So negative 9 minus x1 is 7. So let's go ahead and look at that. 8 minus a negative is the same as plus. 8 plus 6 is 14. Negative 9 minus 7 is a negative 16. Reduce this by dividing out the 2, and we come up with m equals negative 7/8. Notice my two answers are the same. Therefore, it does not matter the order in which you choose as long as you plug them into the formula correctly. Now that example is what if you're given 2 coordinate points. This next example is what happens if you're given standard form. So standard form, ax plus by equals c. And we want to find the slope. In other words, what we want to do is we need to rearrange to get y alone. So here I have ax plus by equals c. To rearrange it says that I would have that by is equal to negative ax plus c. Divide everything by b. Y is going to be negative a over b x plus c over b. So this is the general idea of what it is that we're doing. So let's go ahead and actually look at my standard form here. So I have 2x plus 8y equals 11. So unpacking my y says the first thing I need to do is I need to move my x. So I'm going to take this x and I'm going to shift it to the other side. Since it is positive, to move it says I have to subtract. So this leaves me with 8y is equal to negative 2x plus 11. I need to divide everything by 8. So I end up with y equaling negative 2 over 8 x plus 11 over 8. Now the last thing that I need to do is I need to reduce. 2 over 8 will simplify down. I can take a 2 out of top and bottom, so this is really going to give me y equals negative 1/4 x plus 11 over 8. Now here the only thing I care about is the slope. So when we're talking about slope, the one thing that we need to remember is that my slope is going to come from the coefficient attached to x. So here, when we're looking at it, your slope is going to be that m equals negative 1/4. And this was all that we care about. We don't care about anything else. We haven't actually talked about the equation as of yet. We're just simply rewriting it so that we can find the slope of the line. Alright. This next one also says determine the slope of the line, but notice here it's not quite so straightforward. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to rewrite your equation. So I have x plus 2 divided by 3 plus 2 times 1 minus y equals a negative 2x. The first thing I want to do is get rid of this fraction. So I am going to multiply this entire equation by 3. What that means is that this 3 is being multiplied to the first part, to the second part, and to the third part. So 3 over 3 cancels and is going to leave behind x plus 2. 3 over here is going to multiply just to this outer part here. It's going to leave behind the parentheses. And so 3 times 2 is going to be 6 times 1 minus y. And then this, again, 3 times 2 is going to give me a negative 6x. I now have to work to get y by itself. So I need to distribute. So I have x plus 2 plus 6 minus 6y equals a negative 6x. I'm going to take this x and I'm going to move it. Because it's positive, I have to subtract. So I'm going to have 2 plus 6 minus a 6y is equal to negative 7x. I need to combine my terms. So this is 8 minus 6y equals negative 7x. Take this and move it over. Again, because it's positive, to move it says I have to subtract. So I get negative 6y is equal to negative 7x minus 8. Divide everything by negative 6. So I end up with y is equal to negative 7 over negative 6x minus 8 over a negative 6. And I have to work to reduce. So we have that y is going to be negative over negative becomes positive. So this is 7 over 6x. Again, negative over negative is positive. 8 over 6 can reduce by pulling a 2 out of top and bottom. So this becomes a 4 over 3. Again, the only thing that we care about is your slope. And slope is the coefficient of your x term. Therefore, my slope is 7/6, and this is my answer. The last one I wanted to look at is now more of a word problem. So it says that Amy owns stock in Trimetric Technologies. If the stock had a value of $2,500 in 2003 when she purchased it, what is the average change in value per year if in 2005 the stock was worth $31.50? So there's a couple things that you need to know. First, X is going to represent your years. Now, a lot of students will say, why does it matter? Well, it just kind of does. X in general usually represents your years, and years is generally your horizontal axis, or when we're talking about time or anything to that effect. That means your Y is usually going to be anything else. So in this case, my Y is talking about the money. So it can be your money, it can be height, it can be distance, it can be kind of anything else, but it's usually the other variable. So what this means is that we are going to create parentheses that are years, comma, money. And we have two sets of parentheses we can create. First and foremost, we have the year 2003. So we know that in 2003, the stock was worth $2,500. And then we also know that in 2005, the stock was worth $31.50. So we have to find the average change. Well, average change essentially means find the slope. So in this case, we have to use that m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So if you remember, the first step is you want to declare. Whenever I'm trying to decide which variables to use, I like to keep my variables positive as much as possible. So I would first look at my two x's. And in order to keep my x's positive, it would mean that the 2005 has to be x2, so this is y2, and the 2003 is x1, so this is y1. Once you declare or know what you're doing, you just simply have to plug it into the formula. So y2, 3150, minus y1, 2500, over x2, 2005, minus x1, 2003. Again, remember your vertical numbers should coincide to the coordinate points that they came from. Okay, and that's one of the ways that you know that you set it up correctly. So you just simply have to do the math. So you're going to do the subtraction on the top and the subtraction on the bottom, and when you're done, you should come out with $325 per year. And that would be your rate of change. So in a nutshell, that's kind of everything that you need to know in order to get started working with slope and the different forms of which that you might be solving it. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, make sure that you relax, smile, enjoy, and have fun with your math. And as always, I'll see you next time.